And welcome back to the Wellness Business Show. Now, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things branding. Why? Because it's the big question, right? When you get into your business, you start thinking about your services, your offers, your pricing, your client base, and of course, your marketing, right? Your visibility, how you're going to show up. And there begs the question about your branding. So, today in this episode, I'm going to give you some really hard and fast practical tips on what it is you truly need to stand out in your space, what it is that's worth investing in. I think this is a really big challenge that I see so many people get stuck on because you can get a sense that branding feels important, but how do you know what aspects of branding really matter, where it's worth spending the money and where perhaps it isn't? And yeah, does it really make any difference whatsoever? So if you've ever wondered if all this branding stuff really matters, then you're in the right place. And I'm going to debunk it all so that you can run away after this episode and get real clarity on where to best place your time and energy. So, when we talk about branding, it can get quite lost in the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty. So sometimes we think about branding, we think about our logo, we think about the visual representation of our business. So that might be, depending if you've got a brick and mortar business, that might be like what your brochures look like. It might be what your displays look like, what your A board looks like, what your window display looks like, even like what your uniform looks like, right? What you're going to wear. Everything about the experience when someone comes into your premises, what your brand looks and feels like. Now, if you've got an online business or if you're exploring the online element of your brick and mortar business, you're going to be thinking about your website, your online presence. You're going to be thinking about colors, about fonts, about imagery, about your visuals. You're going to be thinking about things like your Instagram grid, what that looks like, and how to create this cohesion. Whilst there are so many components that make up certainly a visual brand and that sense of cohesion across, if someone comes across your website, walks into your premises, stumbles across your Instagram, picks up some of your promotional material, the sense that it all feels like it comes from the same business. There's also this question around what's the point of a brand? What are we trying to do? And so before I dive into like what's really important, what's worth investing in, what's not, I think it's important that we think about, whilst those are perhaps the agreed upon brand assets, what is it that a brand really does? Because I think if we can get clear on this, we can start to get really clear on the things that are worth spending time and energy and ultimately money on. Because when it comes to branding, as like so much in your business that you're investing in, this isn't just money that you're spending out with no return, right? Aspects of your brand should ultimately get you a return. You should feel that as a result of investing in your brand, you're able to really see a return. Maybe people start responding to your business differently. Maybe you find that your social media content is converting more. Maybe you find that your retention is higher. Maybe you find your word of mouth increases, or maybe you just find booking goes up, sales go up, all of that stuff that really helps to show you that the branding work that you've done, the money that you've invested has been worthwhile. So whilst they're all the assets and they're the things that we externally are going to be spending money on, let's think about what we're trying to achieve with this cohesive brand. So when we think about branding and bigger brands that we are used to supporting, investing in, whatever, or even some of your local brands like your local gym or whatever, brands make us feel something, right? A good, strong brand helps you feel something. It helps you to determine whether this is a place for me or not. Is this somewhere that I fit? Is this something that aligns with my values? It's a way of communicating with your current clients and potential clients and helps them to start to get curious about whether they want to find out more about what you offer. Maybe if they want to make an inquiry. Branding's also interesting because whilst it's a really important element of getting people in the door, it can also be a really powerful element of keeping them and retaining them as clients. And if you've been in my world for any length of time, you'll know that I talk a lot about this idea of not just thinking about acquiring new clients, finding new clients all the time, but rather also exploring just how important it is to focus on selling to those clients you already have, keeping them in your business, and ultimately creating this ecosystem that enables you to continue selling to the same customer. Now, a strong brand identity can often really help with this sense of alignment. Like, we want to align ourselves with certain brands because the brands have values that we adhere to, that we align with, because the brand looks cool. Like, let's just say it as it is. There's some things that you'll be actively investing in as we speak right now, simply because it looks cool. And that's fine, right? That's okay. There may be brands that make you feel safe. And there's certainly an element there around the consistency of branding and the comfort that we get from the uniform energy that a brand allows us to feel, and this sense of cohesion and coherence. And our brain likes that. It's like, yeah, I know that's by Apple because the branding is consistent. I know what I'm going to get. I feel safe with this brand. And I'm kind of going to pause on that step a little bit, because as wellness business owners, as business owners who rely on the need really to build trust with potential clients, often way before you know they exist, building trust and comfort and assurance through a visual brand identity can be really, really powerful in elevating your sales in a way that kind of before you're able to communicate directly with these clients. So I even just want you to start thinking about that. Like, I planted that seed that as you think about your brand and the cohesion around your brand and that sense of safety and trust that your brand is or isn't conveying right now, that may well already be impacting your sales. And of course, as I say, this is also relevant for those that you are currently working with. They will certainly feel more held and supported by a cohesive brand, albeit it may not be to them everything that your Instagram grid and website and brochures and all of that look, really on point and perfectly cohesive. But they will certainly feel a sense of, does the way that this person or business portray themselves online remain consistent with my experience, with them or behind closed doors or in their wellness center or wherever it is that you work with your clients, or even across that Zoom screen. So it's really important that we think of it from both of those angles, and you start to consider your business and what your business offers and what may be essential to your business to convey with their brand that perhaps may or may not be as important to another type of business. Now, I thought I'd lay my cards on the table here, as I always try to do with my work, to share my story of branding a little bit, which has been interesting for sure. So when I think about when I first opened my brick and mortar business, my day spa 13 years ago, it felt more obvious to have a brand. The branding for that business felt essential. And when I say that, I mean like the key and core components that some of us think about when we think about branding. Felt important, very important. I had a recognizable logo. It felt very important we had brand colors. We had like a palette that would mean you've just walked into Uniquely Organic Eco Spa, or you've just picked up a brochure from Uniquely Organic Eco Spa. Our uniforms were that color. It made, like, when I was setting it up, buying furniture, helpful to have a color palette, right? It all felt very, and we use this now as a phrase, right? Very on brand. So it's interesting because, again, that went across to our Instagram, it went across to our website, it went across to everything. And I remember quite early on in that business journey, investing in professional imagery. So again, it wasn't so much of a question. I had my team professionally photographed. I had the spa itself professionally photographed. Some of our products, so we made our own products. Some of those, I had them professionally shot. And yeah, that all felt like a really essential, non-negotiable upfront expense, right? Investment. And 1,000,000% when I look back on that and think, had I decided to create a high street day spa with zero branding, how do I think that would have gone? I think it was essential. I think it was really important that we had like our UO logo. We just had our color. We had everything. Like you could just tell it was us. There was such a stamp of us. Now, fast forward to when I started my online business, the clarity there in terms of what kind of branding did I need? What things would I invest in? I mean, it was not a no-brainer. I didn't have any branding at all. I think I might have kind of chosen a few colors that I liked. I think a color palette maybe was one of the first things that I did. And by the way, if anyone needs a heads up on a website to help you for free create a flawless color palette, go to Coolors, I think it is, which is COOLORS. Helps you play around with colors. Pretty sure that's the first place I went to. But beyond that, it really was scrappy. And I'm telling you this because I did pretty okay. Like I remember having my first 10 grand online launch of an online course, like first online program. That was like an amazing goal hit for me just in one launch. And I'm not going to lie, I would be embarrassed right now for you guys to see what we were working with at that point, right? It was not where we're at now. I don't think I had a sales page. I would have had a very bodged website. It was like selfie at that point, for sure. I do remember like taking some time over that and contorting myself into some kind of crazy positions and angles and getting varying different lights and whatever, like trying to make the best of it. So they weren't terrible, but yeah, I mean, it was like it wasn't what you see now. And I didn't invest anything in it. I made my own website. And I think it's important for me to tell you that because I think it's interesting to think about if your business were a high street business, would you be making the same decisions? Would you be worrying so much about investing in those things? And on the other side of the coin, with an online business, what that tells me is that whilst some of those like brand assets were incredibly important for my brick and mortar business, as they didn't seem to carry so much weight for my online business, could we therefore surmise that actually there was something else going on? And so whilst I wasn't building my brand on slick logos. And if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, you can see behind me, I've got my KK logo, all I have a neon sign now behind me with that. But if I didn't have that, if I didn't have those assets, if I didn't have the color palette, or maybe I had a loose color palette, it wasn't nice. I didn't have any of the like nice templates for Instagram. I didn't have the photos or anything. Could we maybe surmise that the brand, I was still building a brand, but the brand was based a lot more on my messaging, on my voice, on a consistency still around me. I was showing a lot of me and what I was doing and sharing my story. So there was still a lot of consistency in the messaging and in the visuals. It just wasn't what we would maybe determine or consider to be really slick and what we quote unquote need. So that's been my story. And then I battled for ages with, I guess the first thing was I wanted to get proper like logos. I wanted to get proper brand assets. I wanted to be able to create more cohesion across all my platforms. I wanted to be able to build a website that reflected where I was heading. And I really wanted some professional photos, but I was terrified. And I think some of you will relate to this. I was terrified with the investment. So it was thousands for a branding shot. I was like, what do I wear? How do I know? Like, what does my brand wear? I remember getting this questionnaire from a branding photographer, and it was all like, yeah, well, if your brand were a whatever, what would it be? And I was just thinking, oh, I have no idea. Didn't know what to wear. I was also like, I'm going to feel so freaking awkward in front of that camera. I'm going to be all over the place, all awkward. And genuinely, my greatest fear was that I would go through all that. I would put all the money into it. I would, stress out over the outfits. And then I'd get the photos back and I'd freaking hate them. I'd hate them. I'd never use them. And there's something like, not even just like, oh, I don't like these, but also like, like maybe it would hit my confidence that when I saw these photos, I'd be like, oh, I don't like this at all. So I kicked the can down the road on doing that for such a long time. I eventually did it. And actually, it was a game changer for me. All of the kind of fears I had were laid to rest. I loved the photos when I got them back. But most importantly, it really symbolized this sense of like backing myself, elevating my brand. But the greatest kind of insight I got was how it escalated my visibility. So I know lots of you listening to this, because when you come to me and talk to me about your business and your challenges, one of the greatest things is I want to be out there more. I want to increase my visibility. I know I need to show up more, but often it's like, but I feel held back. I'm feeling like I don't want to post. I feel quite insecure about showing up online. I don't want to look stupid. I don't know what to share. All of these things. And I really noticed it in myself as soon as I had the brand visuals, like the photos to back the message, that if they were finally in alignment, it weren't just me in some weird like selfie pose. Something shifted. My visibility, my ability to access my visibility changed, because I suddenly had this library, this glossary of images that matched the message. It's the best way that I can say it. And not only did that change the way I showed up, but it also changed the way that people showed up for me. So I thought I'd walk you through kind of the 4 key things that I learned during this time, and what I would say to any of you who are thinking of like, is branding that important? What's worth investing in and what isn't, from my experience and from that of my clients. So the first thing I want to say, and I think this is really evident in the kind of story arc of my business, is that I think the key thing is just to not drop thousands on building branding assets like the logo, the colors, even the shoot, the branding shoot, all of that, until you've nailed your message. So I think what enabled me to get as far as I did, whilst really not looking like I had my shit together and bodging a lot of things, was that my brand message was clear. The thing that was clearest to me in my business journey from the beginning, which I've certainly honed, but I did have clarity initially, is who I was talking to. So more so than now, because now I am genuinely in conversation with my ideal client every single day. Whereas obviously when you start a business, that just isn't the case, right? You wish you were in conversation with your ideal client every day. And so when someone that does the kind of job I do says to you like, well, what are their greatest challenges? What are their greatest aspirations? What's keeping them awake at night? You're like, I don't know. I'm not spending enough time with these people. So back then I did a hell of a lot of work on that, on really I remember doing kind of, when I was writing posts, I'd put my big headphones on, I'd listen to like a Spotify journaling playlist, so I'd really get in my zen zone, and I would write as if I were really writing to the heart of this client. Like, what are they worrying about? What can I help them with? And I spent so much time on the ground listening, doing the research, getting clear on who my person was, what they were struggling with, not just like the baseline stuff, not just they want more clients, they want to make more sales, which is ultimately the kind of general challenge for my ideal client. But it was like, why? Why does that matter? What is it they're not able to do right now as a result? Like, what's stressing them out? And it'd be things like they can't relax and enjoy time with their family because they're constantly worrying about money and where the next client's coming from. They're looking out on social media and seeing so many people in their space nailing it and knowing that they have so much to not offer, if not more to offer, but just cannot figure out how to get in front of the people that they want to help. They feel that there's this wave of impact they're here to create, and yet they're being held back. They're the world's best kept secret, all of these things. And so I really, really got clear on who I was working with, who I was for, and my message was nailed. So I would argue that if you at your business right now don't feel clear on your message, I would start there. I would actually invest there. So invest in working with someone that's going to help you to hone your message first. I think once your message is locked in, then when you lay upon the brand assets and the visuals, your brand will simply elevate. Building your brand and your brand voice first, in my world, in my rule book, is absolutely where to start. Now, the second thing that I learned is that you can keep your brand visuals really simple and create that consistency and that cohesion and the coherence that we need as consumers to help us, to help with the trust, right? To help you give us this nod that you've got us, you've got it, we are safe with you. And also so that we can recognize you amongst the noise. A big part of brand visuals is that when you pop up on my Instagram, I know it's you. And I'm not like left thinking or just scrolling past because it could be anyone, right? So I think this is really, really important. And I think you can do this in 3 really simple ways that will cost you nothing. So the first is to get your brand colors down. So as I said, I gave you a free website there that you can go and work on your color palette. Once you've locked in your color palette, keep it consistent throughout. So you don't need it to be anything particularly fancy. Spend time on your colors so that they reflect your brand values and your business. Do some research, get on the ground again, go and have a look at other brand visuals that you like, or things that stand out, things that are a bit different, things that feel like you, that they represent your brand, that they make your clients feel how you want your clients to feel. And once you've locked those brand colors in, keep them consistent throughout. Really simple way, but really powerful way of creating that sense of cohesion, that sense of I've got you, I'm consistent, and I'm professional. Now, the next thing that I think is really powerful is your brand. I'm going to put your brand fonts and message in here. So 2 slightly different things, but I want to get 3 in. So I'm squidging 2 together here. So we've talked about your message. That's really, really important. So what you say and the way in which that message is conveyed. So simple things like over on Canva, go and choose your fonts, choose maybe 3 fonts that you're going to use and stick with those fonts. So you've got your colors, you've got your fonts across everything that you do. They stay consistent. Now, your message is one thing, so your content and your copy and making sure that you're creating a brand voice with that. And a little hack here. If you've got any copy that you're proud of, that you love, maybe some emails that have done really well, some sales copy that's great, you think is good, some posts, some Instagram posts that you've written that you really feel like you, like plug all of them into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to create your brand voice. It will give you a nice strong passage that you can then use in things like ChatGPT to make sure that your brand message stays consistent. But beyond that, I also want you to think about certain things that you might say. So for me, and this is really genuine, really authentic, I use the word lovely all the time. So I'll be like, hey, lovely, how you doing? Now I say that a lot in my podcast, but hey, lovely, welcome back to the podcast. So in my emails, in my content, in the way that I talk to clients on Zoom, it's consistent. So there might be some key phrases, a kind of voice that you have. And this will hopefully get picked up in your summary in ChatGPT if you plug in enough information. But start to ask it to pull out some of your isms. Now, some people will speak really beautifully and have everything pronounced really, really well and an incredible vocabulary, and that's their thing. Some people will be more conversational, like they're chatting to a friend. None of these things are right or wrong. There's not one brand voice. In fact, if you think again and do your research on who stands out to you, a lot of the time it won't be the kind of conventional, traditional voice that you think is the professional voice. Actually, often nowadays we prefer a voice that's friendly, that sounds like our best mate, that brings us in on the journey and doesn't feel too alienating. But whatever is your natural voice, we want to start creating a sense of cohesion across all of your content. So you might have in the hero bar of your website, rather than, I don't know, something that says, nutritional therapist. You might have something like, hey, lovely, it's Kirsty here, and then talking about what you do. But you have something that brings people in. So if they've seen you anywhere else online, they're like, oh, there she is. Yeah, she's got a similar vibe and message. And now the third thing that I think is really important. So we've got your colors. We've got I plugged in a few there with your font, your message, and any isms, your brand voice. And the third thing I want you to think about is your visuals. So I understand that where you are right now in your business, you might not have a plethora of amazing brand shots that you love and adore and can't wait to share. Neither may you have the budget to go and invest in that. So my invitation here is to remind you that people buy from people. And although some of your pictures, images, videos, whatever, could feel a little bit rough around the edges, they may not feel as polished as you'd like them to be, they may well be selfies, I would still encourage you to get as much of you out there as possible. When you think about a client journey, what is certainly true about moving people further up that journey towards never ever knowing you, towards buying, is that know, like, and trust factor, is that sense of feeling like they know you. And there's so many ways we can do this. Creating something like a podcast is a great way of doing it. Going on stories is a great way of doing it because it's behind the scenes, allows your clients into your world. But also sharing images of you and what you're doing and behind the scenes content and who you are will help clients to feel connected to you. And it's that sense of that kind of humanity, that sense of relatability, like connecting to you and knowing who you are as a human, that's going to really help to move people towards you. So I'd discourage you, even if you haven't got that plethora of images right now and you're starting to feel like, oh, I don't like the pictures I have, I don't want to share anything of me, I'm going to keep things quite like arm's length, I'm just going to go for a ton of Canva templates, and all right, Kirsty, even to satisfy you, I might use my brand colors in those templates, but I'm not going to use any of myself. I promise you, it will be so much harder for you to stop the scroll. It'll be so much harder for you to build those relationships. It's not impossible, but it'll be slower. And it just won't allow people to get that live and kicking sense of who you really are. My third learning here, and I reluctantly say this because it's a little bit like a race to the finish line on these two. I'm like, which do I think is the most important? Because in all honesty, if they could be together, married together as a match made in heaven, it would be great. But I do think that investing in your strategy before the branding, before the aesthetics, is the right way to go. So I've spoken endlessly on this podcast and many other places that, particularly as wellness business owners, we learn how to do our craft really freaking well, right? We're great at what we do. We spend all of our time and energy honing it, training in the best places, being the best we can be at it, and having the aspiration to be the best at it. And then we go out into the world like, right, come on then, I'm ready. I'm ready to work my magic and change some lives. And then crickets, like, where is everyone? And that's because we never learn business. We think being good at what we do is enough. And wouldn't that be epic, right? Wouldn't that just be amazing? But as I mentioned earlier, the truth is very often you're the world's best kept secret. So when people come across you and they do the work with you and they can't, all of those things, they can't say enough about how much you've changed their lives. But how do you get that in front of more people? And so quite a lot of people are fumbling along, not really having a plan. And so I do believe that strategy is the thing, right? It's like taking you from A to B. It's the sat nav, it's the direction, it's helping you understand what step you need to take next in order to get the outcome that you want. No longer the wish and hope and just like manifesting it all. We are placing some really strategic steps along the way. So your brand is more than how it looks. It really is how it leads. So if you are creating impact and waves, and there's still so many people out there that are like knocking it out of the park without any branding at all, and that will be because they're being strategic in their actions. So making sure that you have a solid plan that you can then apply your branding to, your visuals to, your concepts to, will just ensure, again, that the money invested, the energy and time invested is worth it. So just a little recap on that. So the first thing to think about is not to drop thousands on your logos and your kind of visual identity before your message. You may well find yourself having to do it all over, because once you get clarity on your message, it can really help to spring you into exactly what you want to look and sound like. Keep your brand visual simple, consistent, and clear. And you can do that in those really simple ways, thinking about your messaging, your fonts, your isms, your brand voice, thinking about your colors, and then thinking about ensuring that you are at the forefront of your brand. And then investing in the strategy before the aesthetics. So the final thing I wanted to touch on is the brand shots, the images, right? Because professional brand shots, although they can be a big investment, although for so many of you watching and listening to this, you'll be like, oh, there is nothing I want to do less than stand in front of a camera and awkwardly have people take photos of me for my business. Even though I know all that to be true, I also know that one of the biggest game changers in my business, both from a confidence perspective, which has enabled me to get more visible, and also just from having my visuals align with my vision and finally have a catalogue of images that I feel represent my business and brand, rather than me trying to do some bodged thing on my phone, has been a huge game changer. Because whilst you can get so far with the selfies and the kind of, maybe if you've had a friend take a couple of nice photos of you, keep using those, you will find that over time it starts to impact the space that you take up. When you have some brand shots that you're super proud of that represent your vision and where you're going, you will notice that not only do you show up to your business differently, but those who are thinking about working with you show up differently too. They show up to you differently. People respond to your business and your brand differently. You can command higher prices. You can take up more space. People tend to listen. It's an interesting one as well. If you're someone that's ever struggled with this feeling that, I don't know if people really take me and my little business seriously. Like, maybe you got people following you from school and from your old workplace, and you're embarrassed to share stuff because you're like, who do I think I am? I think having this shift from using selfies and your own DIY stuff to having properly done brand shots that, let's face it, we know this as professionals in our space. If we let the professionals do it, if you let a professional photographer do it, they know how to capture that essence. They're going to take control of making sure you feel comfortable. Certainly a good one will anyway. And then when it comes to sharing those images, you are going to feel that you aren't in this kind of makeshift, small, don't mind me energy. You're here to take up so much space because you have stuff to share and your business is legit. It's professional. It's here to make some change. And honestly, nothing is more exciting than that reveal post when you've just had a brand shot and you can be like, oh my God, what do you think of these new brand visuals? Like, come into the comments, let me know which is your favorite, new profile pictures, new website pictures, so many powerful new Instagram pictures. And you only need to scroll through my Instagram to see when I went from the selfies to the professional brand shots to see the difference that it makes. And I reckon if you go and have a little look at those that you are thinking about working with soon, that they will also have a really strong visual brand identity. So whilst I get this may not be the thing that you can run out the door and do immediately because of budget or because of where you're at in your business right now, I strongly recommend that once you've got those other things in place, that putting yourself in the arena, getting a little bit uncomfortable and having some professional shots done will honestly be a game changer. Which brings me, my lovelies, to actually tell you about a brand new offer that I have just dropped today called the Big Picture Day. So if you are someone who maybe isn't quite ready for a full branding shoot, but would really love a catalogue of images you can be mega proud of that align with your business and your vision, with half, if not a quarter of the price tag of what it would cost to go and get a big branding shoot done. Plus, you'll be with me, you'll be with our community. Then I'd love to invite you along to this very special event. So it's happening on November the 28th in Brighton, which is where I live. So right by the sea, we have the most gorgeous venue. There are only a few spots left, and it's going to be like a half brand shoot day and a half strategy day. So you're going to come along, you're going to get 10 brand new shots to use all over your socials, all over your websites, everywhere that you want to be visible. And you're also going to get to do a 90-day strategy session with me. And again, this one isn't going to be a kind of jot things down in your notebook, wish and hope that these manifest. I'm going to be giving you an epic wall planner. You and I together, along with everyone else on the day, are going to be mapping out your next 90 days. We're going to be reverse engineering from exactly the goals you want to hit, the vision that you see yourself manifesting in the next 90 days. Working backwards, planning out your services, planning out your offers, looking at your pricing, looking at your launch plans, and mapping it out over the next 90 days. So that not only do you walk away from the event with these awesome brand shots, and by the way, the shots themselves will be taken by my partner, Johnny, who is an incredible photographer. If you go to the sales page for this event, so it'll be kirstykianifard.com/big picture. There's loads of examples of his work. Loads of all the photos on my grid in the last year have been his photos. So he's amazing. He's going to make you feel so comfortable. You're going to come away with the most glorious photos. But not only will you come away with that, you'll come away with a really solid strategy to apply. So as I said, there are limited spots available. I would highly encourage you to come along, particularly if you haven't ever really had some proper brand shots done and you're feeling a bit nervous about it, or you're not quite sure and you're not sure if you're ready for the big investment yet. I would highly encourage you to come, and it would be awesome for you and I to hang out. So if you want to come along, head over to kirstykianifard.com/big picture. The link is in the show notes and the bio. And if you've got any questions, as always, come over and have a chat with me on Instagram. But yeah, I think it's really important that we talk about this. I think some people will have a little bit of a flat kind of answer, blanket answer to what's worth investing in. Of course, if we had endless budget, endless time, endless energy, I'd say do it all immediately. But I think what's really important, and what I hope you take away from today's episode, is that a brand isn't just about what things look like. It's really about what things feel like. And without any budget at all, without any fancy photos, without any brand colors, without anything, you can do that on your messaging alone. Yes, it will take that little bit longer, maybe to be seen and noticed, but starting there will be invaluable. You can then lay upon it with some simple colors, some simple imagery, some really powerful messaging, not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it, developing your brand voice. And then when you're ready, bit by bit, you can start to add in some more of those branding assets, hopefully get those fancy brand shots done, and then really start to see the strategy elevate all of those pieces together. All right, my lovelies, I'd love to hear from you. Have you started investing in your brand yet? Maybe you've had a shocker of a story. Did you invest in your branding? Not love it? How are you feeling about a potential branding shot? Are you curious about the big picture day and coming along and getting some done there? As always, I love to hear from you. So I'm over on Instagram at Kirsty Kianifard. My DMs are always open. So just jump in and let me know your experience of branding so far. All right, my lovelies, as always, so good to be with you. I will see you very soon. Take care. Bye.